during product
And I
manufacturing,
look forward to
including
working with my colleagues on
in-process
Energy and
testing,
Commerce to
drug
get this
substance
through the
testing,
committee again,
drug
to
product
get it
testing,
past the House.
and
And I
stability
call on
testing.
my colleagues in the Senate, to Republican
The
and
in-process
Democrat,
testing
to
is conducted
please act
during
to
manufacturing
make this a
process to
real
collect
priority
information
in this
to
Congress.
facilitate process
So I want to
development
thank all of my
and
colleagues, and
validation
I'm going to
for
turn this
later
over to
stage
my
product development.
friend Fred Upton
I want to
and
bring
thank
it
him
to your
for what he
attention
does
that
on so many
the
different
mycoplasma
things. And
and
thanks
in
for
vitro
being here
advantageous
on this
virus
one.
testing should
Fred?
be conducted
Well,
with
Debbie, thanks for
unprocessed bulk
you.
harvested
Make just a few
from the
remarks
crude viral culture
and
before
we'll,
any downstream
from
processing,
there. I just
because
want to
the
really
downstream
thank you for your
processing,
leadership on this. You know, we have
such as
divided government.
cell lysis,
You and I have both been
filtration, and
very frustrated over
purification,
the last number of
will
years
reduce
with
the
the
chance of
inability
detecting
to actually get
mycoplasma
something truly
and viral
meaningful on
contaminants.
PFAS. And this is an issue that,
The in
frankly,
vitro
most Americans,
advantageous
most
virus testing
Michiganders,
is
you and
particularly
me,
challenging for
a couple years ago,
oncolytic
had never heard of.
viruses because
And it
the viral
took,
product
you know, what happened
can
in
cause
Michigan
cytopathic
to
effect
certainly
in
bring
testing
it to our
cells,
attention.
which interferes with the
And Governor Snyder,
interpretation
to
of
his
the
credit,
testing
brought it to other
result.
governors' attention, and
Alternative
their
approaches
reaction
may
was
be
the
used
same.
to
They didn't know what it
circumvent this
was either.
problem.
And we
For
know that
example,
it is a real
you may
issue.
use antibodies
And
to
what this
neutralize
legislation
the
intends to
virus
do is to get
prior
EPA
to
on our
testing.
side. We need a partner.
But please do not
We need a
use
partner
human
that
or
can
monkey
battle this,
antisera.
to identify
And if
those
you need to
hot
dilute
spots,
the
to
test
work with
particles, please
companies
dilute as
across
little as
the
possible.
nation to inform consumers,
Another approach is
and to
to
take the
test the
meaningful
mock-infected
steps of actually
production
cleaning
control
up
cells
where there's
that are cultured in
contaminated
parallel
sites.
to the production of
You and I
cells.
worked hard a few
The
years
production
ago
control
to
cells
try
in
and
parallel
even
culture
get an
should be treated
amendment
the same
on the
way
defense
as the cells
authorization
used
bill
for
that
the
would
virus
require the
production,
Defense
except that they
Department
are not
to clean
infected.
up their contaminated
And a
sites.
third
And
approach
we
is
were
to use
denied the
NGS
opportunity to
for
even
detection
offer the
of
amendment, though it was
advantageous viruses.
bipartisan. And
But
frankly,
currently,
I'm
we do
convinced that it
not
would have
allow
passed by
NGS to
voice.
be used as the
So
sole
what this
method
bill
for the
does is
testing.
obviously it raises the
It may
attention
be
to a very
only
important
used as
subject.
a supplementary
It
approach
shows
to
our
the standard
leadership on
AVA
both sides of
testing.
the aisle, as well as the American public, that indeed it is
For lot
bipartisan.
release, products should be
And
tested for
it will
sterility,
allow us to
identity,
finally really
purity,
begin to
potency,
embark
and
on the cleanup
appearance.
program that I think makes
The
sense.
identity can be tested
Now,
with
for
nucleic
me,
acid-based or protein-based
I've seen this
approaches.
firsthand. It was a couple of years ago. I
Purity
was
is
coming back to
assessed by
Michigan
measuring
from
endotoxin,
starting the August break.
process residues,
And
and
as I landed
product-related impurities such
coming
as
back from D.C., I got a frantic
non-infectious viral
call from my
particles and the
state
genetic
senator who told
variants.
me about a
For
very
potency, we always
contaminated
recommend
site in a
sponsors
small
to
town
use
in Kalamazoo County,
matrix-based approach
Parchment.
to evaluate the different
And I
aspects of
immediately
the
got on the
biological
horn and worked
activities
with
of that
our
product,
sheriff department,
such
our
as
first
the
responders,
infectivity,
our health
transgene
department,
expression,
to literally
tumor-specific cell
not
killing,
waste
and
a
the induction
minute.
of
I mean,
pro-inflammatory
folks went door to
cytokines.
door that night
We also
telling
encourage sponsors to
residents
start working
to
on
stop
development
using their
of
tap water,
biologically
stop
relevant
watering their
and
yards,
quantitative
to
potency assays
disconnect
early
their
in the
ice
product
machines and the
development,
refrigerators,
which may
making
be
infant
useful for
formula for the next,
establishing comparability
all of those
and
things,
selecting
because
an
we knew that the
appropriate
levels were
potency assay for lot
exceedingly
release
high,
in later
and we
phase.
couldn't wait till the next day to tell folks.
Appearance should be
And
visually
for
checked
months,
for the
we
absence of
worked together to
aggregates
actually
and
pass bottled
precipitates
water
for
out
each drug product
until
vial.
they were so lucky they
Please
were
also
able to
establish
coordinate with the city
product-specific
next door, the
reference
city of
standard
Kalamazoo, and
and
the city
use
of
it
Parchment,
as a
and
control
literally
for assay
bridge
variability.
two water systems together. So that in fact the folks using
In
that
your
municipal
IND,
water
please
supply would
establish a
know that their
plan to
water
assess
was
the
safe
product
and didn't
stability
have
and the
PFAS in
long-term
it
storage
that
condition
probably
by
came from
checking the
a
appearance,
paper
potency,
plant that
sterility, and
long
quality.
ago closed.
And also please
It was
assess the
that
stability and
attention that
accelerated
really put
storage
this on the
and
front
forced
burner
degradation
for both of
conditions.
us as we try to deal with this.
Please
So
provide the data
whether it's
to
dealing with our
demonstrate the
airports, our
short-term
military bases,
in-use
our
and
communities,
in-device stability of
this
the drug
is a
product
bad
during
substance, and
administration,
people need to
which
be
should
warned
be
about it,
tested under
and we need
conditions
to
that
make sure
mimic
that
those
the EPA
during the
helps
administration
us
process
help
at the
the
clinic.
rest of the country deal with
In
this
addition,
so that we don't
and
have
established
continuing
shipping
problems down the road.
procedures
And
should
I'm
be in place to
excited
ensure product
to work together with
potency,
you again on this
sterility, and
issue as
quality
we've done on a lot of
during
them.
shipping
Look
from the
forward to
manufacturing
questions,
site
but
to
I think
clinical
it really
sites.
ought to stay a bipartisan way so that we can help clean the
so
water
we
and
are
make
done
sure
with the
all of our
manufacturing
citizens
and
have clean
testing
water across the
of
country.
oncolytic virus
So with
product.
that, I yield
So
back
now
and
I'm going to
anxious
talk a
to
little
take
bit
questions we
about
might
the
have.
design
But I
of
think we got
shedding
other speakers
studies
that are
to
coming too.
I
evaluate
think you were supposed to
the
introduce
product
Mark, so
shedding
I'm going to
during
say,
clinical
I
trials.
literally door, literally as I turned
Shedding
this
is
on. So
defined as
anyway,
the
Mark,
release
you're
of
up. Nice
oncolytic
to see you.
products
Thank
Nice to see
from
you.
treated
Nice to
subjects
see you, Representative
through
Upton,
excreta,
and
for
thank you,
example,
Congresswoman
feces,
Dingell,
secreta,
for your
for example,
leadership, both of you
urine,
guys.
saliva, nasopharyngeal fluid,
It's great to be
or the
here,
skin
and
through pustules,
it's always,
sores,
you know,
and wounds.
in this divided climate we're in, water is a
Please be
really
aware
good
that
way
shedding
for
is
us to
distinct
find common
from
ground.
biodistribution.
All the
As
years I've been working in
biodistribution
water,
describes
it
how products
transcends
spread
politics. We
through
really
different
understand it
parts of the body, while shedding
as a
characterizes
nation and as
how the
people,
product is released from the
regardless of
body.
our political ideology.
Because
So
oncolytic virus
it's
are
a really
infectious
good place to be
agents,
working, and I
the
strongly
purpose of the
support
shedding study
the
is
PFAS
to assess the
Action
potential
Act,
for
which will
environmental release
set the
and the
deadlines
transmission
for
to
EPA
untreated
action on
individuals
PFAS
during
pollution.
clinical studies.
As you know, I
And the
played
shedding
the role of
information
Rob
is
Balot
part
in the
of the
movie Dark Waters, which
product
I
labeling for
produced and
licensure
developed.
application.
And this is a story about a
Design of
company
shedding studies
knowingly
should consider the
discharging toxic
characteristics
PFAS
of
into
the
the air
virus,
and water
for
in
example,
Parkersburg, West Virginia.
whether it's replication competent,
Now, after making Dark
whether the
Waters,
virus can
here's what
establish
still
a
amazes me.
persistent and latent
It's
infection,
not that the companies that make
its
PFAS have
immunogenicity,
known since the
and the
1950s that
pre-existing
PFAS
immunity in
could build up in our
patients and the
blood.
tropism.
It's
And
not
it is also
by the
affected by the route of
1960s that the
administration,
companies knew that
dose, and
PFAS
regimen.
could be toxic.
The shedding data
It's
from
not that by the
preclinical studies
1970s the
may
companies
inform the design
knew
of
that
clinical
PFAS was
shedding
harming
studies,
their own
but they
workers. It's
cannot
not by the
substitute the shedding
1980s
studies
that the
in human
companies knew that
subjects.
PFAS was
We
contaminating
also
the tap
encourage
water
sponsors to
of their
start
nearby
collecting shedding
communities.
data from phase
What's
1
amazing to
because
me
the close
is
monitoring
that
of
in
patients
roughly
during phase 1 is
2005, there's roughly
convenient for more extensive
2,500 companies
shedding
today that
sample
are
collection.
still likely discharging
But please
PFAS
be
into
aware
the air
that
and water
shedding
right
study
now
may need
as
to
you and I are
continue through
partaking in
phase
this
2 and
event.
phase 3, even if
Now,
you
what's
conduct the
amazing to
shedding
me
study in phase 1.
is that the EPA has known about the risks posed
So
by
how to
PFAS
design a
for
shedding study?
decades and done
First,
nothing to
you should
regulate
consider
the
what
discharges
types of samples should
under
be
federal
collected.
laws. The Clean
And
Water
this
Act, the
is
Clean
largely
Air Act, or the
determined
Safe Drinking
by the
Water Act.
characteristics of the
The
virus,
PFAS
the
Action
route of
Act, which is what we're
administration,
talking about today,
and the shedding
will
and
simply
biodistribution
set
data from your
deadlines
preclinical
for the
studies. For
EPA to
example,
act.
if
That's
this
it.
is a
The bill
respiratory
doesn't give
virus
the EPA any new
administered by
powers.
intratumoral
It
injection
just
into
tells the
melanoma,
EPA to use the
respiratory
powers that
specimens and
Congress
swabs
gave the
of injection
EPA more than
sites
40
should be
years ago.
collected in addition to
Now,
other
we know
samples.
that PFAS is
If
building
this
up
is
in
a
our blood in
human herpes
organs.
simplex virus
We know that
based
PFAS has
product,
been linked to
samples of
serious health problems.
mucosal
We know that
swabs
PFAS has
should probably
contaminated
be
the
taken in
drinking
addition to
water of
others.
many more than 200 million
Next,
Americans,
you
more
should
than
consider
voted in the
the
last
frequency and the
election.
duration of
And now
sample
sounding
collection.
the alarm on this is important
In
because
general, we recommend
it's important,
frequent
but it's not
sampling
enough.
immediately following
We need to finally
administration.
act.
The sampling
Now,
should
who's going to
be
pay if we
continued
don't act?
until 3
It's
consecutive
us.
data points are
It's
below
the
the
real
limit of
people
detection,
who live in frontline communities,
and sampling
real
to capture
people
the
who
second
are
peak
paying the
of
price
shedding
in the form of
may be
higher
necessary.
healthcare costs and water bills.
Last, you should
And the
consider
kids are going to pay.
the method
And they're
of the
going to pay
detection.
for the rest of their lives.
We recommend
Now,
that you
I'm proud to
detect the
support
shedding
the
using
PFAS Action
specific,
Act, and I'm
sensitive,
grateful
and
for the
quantitative
leadership of
PCR-based
Congressman
method.
Dingell and
And then you can use infectivity assays to
Congressman
determine whether
Upton.
those
At a
PCR
time when
positive
America
samples are
disagrees about so
infectious.
much, it's great to see
It is also
Democrats and
critical to
Republicans agree
ensure
that it's
that
time to clean up
the assays
PFAS
are
pollution.
qualified
Thank you.
and is free from
Thanks, Mark. Scott, I think
potential
you're
matrix
last.
interference
Yeah,
from
and
the
I
sample.
know,
Awesome.
well, and
Samples should
Congressman
be
Upton,
stored
I know
and
you have to
shipped
leave in a minute. So
appropriately
let me just
according
quickly
to
say thank you
established
to both of you,
procedures.
Congresswoman Dingell, Congressman Upton. I like to say the
Okay,
only
now I
thing
have the
more
following
persistent
take-home
than
messages for you.
PFAS is Congresswoman Dingell.
Product safety
So,
is a key consideration
and I'm
in
sure,
early phase
just quickly, I'm sure a
studies
lot of you who are
due to the
watching this are
replication
wondering why
competency
Congress needs
of
to
the
act
oncolytic
since
virus.
President Biden has pledged
Because
to make
oncolytic
PFAS a
viruses
priority.
are
And for
complex
the thousands of
biologics
communities with
manufactured
PFAS in
using
their water,
materials of
especially our defense
biological origin.
communities and communities like Parchment and Parkersburg. The president's pledge to set a drinking water standard for PFAS and to designate some PFAS as hazardous substances is really welcome news. But communities impacted by PFAS have heard pledges and promises before, and under current rules, it could be almost 4 years before EPA even sets a drinking water standard, and years longer before utilities would have to meet it. It could be even longer than that before EPA issues standards for the industrial releases Mark was talking about of PFAS into the air and water. And that's why communities support the deadlines provided by the PFAS Action Act. After decades of inaction, it's really time for action. It's time to quickly designate PFOA and PFAS at a minimum as hazardous substances to kickstart the cleanup process. It's time to quickly set a drinking water standard. It's time to set limits on releases of PFAS into the air and water. And while setting deadlines will not be enough, we also need to provide resources to upgrade our water infrastructure and clean up PFAS at DoD installations. It's really critical to set deadlines for action. So thanks again to two great environmental heroes, Congresswoman Dingell, Congressman Upton, for your leadership, and I'll turn it back to you, Mrs. Dingell.
I don't know the history, but I assume it failed.
And Mark, you really do help us tell the story. I hope people realize this was not fiction. His movie was real.
Oncolytic viruses.
And it's happening in real life. Mackenzie, are you going to do the questions?
Thanks for this. Thank you, everybody, for those great remarks. We'll turn it over to the media right now. You're talking about I'm going to start off with one question that I know a
um,
few of our media members have asked, which is,
adenovirus with the deletion of
legislation different than the one that passed the House last
year?
year?
It is a tumor-specific targeting, but the later study indicated that
how are we going to make this go forward and
it's
get
not
it to
only
the Senate?
the tumor-specific targeting.
It's identical to the PFAS Action Act
to the replication in p53 deficient cancer cells.
When we're in committee,
it has in clinical studies in phase 1 and phase 2 clinical studies of the product. The results looks like it's very promising in terms of its safety and efficacy.
It's also
but unfortunately, the phase 3 study has not been completely completed due to because of the corporate financial reasons rather than scientific reasons. So that phase 3 was stopped, and the company decided to change the focus to a small molecule. And I guess the decision made by this company may have been influenced by several factors at that time, because one of the important thoughts at that time is there's a general skepticism about the validity of the
and I know that Kelly House from Bridge, Michigan wanted to know that she believes President Biden has also committed to making PFAS and
this is also related to some
hazardous substances
limitations
and
of the
drinking water standards. How does this bill relate to that existing
for that
promise?
construct, it has
well, I think Scott did a good job of addressing that. We're obviously working closely with the Biden-Harris administration, and I want to say that they're grateful to Fred for his working with them
candidates
as well.
at that time. For example, the senior virus replicates more robust,
policies immediately that can be done,
and it seems to be more potent and more efficient in lysing than this adenovirus.
And PFAS
and also
as a hazardous
at that time, this virus is not armed
to
with
accelerate the cleanup process is one such regulation
now for many
that the
viruses.
administration should be
And there is also
able to
concern
implement
about
quickly.
its
The safe drinking water
biodistribution
standard
through
drives
IV
me
infusions
nuts that we
because
can't
of
do
the
it, and we just have to get some of this done.
uptake of these
And
viruses.
I think the time is here. I think Fred, we
and
have
so
a commitment.
and also there are concerns
Frank
about
Sloan,
the
Chair of Energy and Commerce,
immunogenicity of the
knows
virus
it's
because
important. He's going to move
because
this.
of the pre-existing
The speaker was
neutralizing
very
antibodies and the
instrumental
complements in
in.
serum
Last year, whenever she saw me coming, she
IV,
wouldn't even ask me how I
infusion
was. She knew the
administration
subject.
for this
And I had
for this
some
product.
colleagues that were the
So
same.
unfortunately, with the current development in the field,
but I've had long
there's more interest
discussions
in
with
the
my-
oncolytic
and
virus because
Fred
of the,
has
I think
too.
because of the
We know a number of the
combination,
senators
the
and have
encouraging
been
result
talking
with the
to them
combination
as well,
therapies,
and to the Biden
especially
administration and
with
pushing
the
them to
checkpoint
act as
inhibitors.
well.
So there are lots
and
of
we
new,
also want to make sure
new
that the,
designs
Department of Defense,
incorporated into
basically,
not
they've
only
been
the
the real
adenovirus,
guilty party
but also
here, because
like
they
other
had
novel
foam and the
new
firefighting
new candidates
foam
of
with PFAS.
oncolytic virus are currently under development. For example, we have TVAC that is approved. It's HSV expressing GM-CSF. So many viruses are going to that route to be armed with
we need to make sure
to be armed with transgenes that provide therapeutic effects or enhance the therapeutic effects. So and also I think it's a trend that there's more and more combination therapies with the
another thing that I'll mention
and
that's
also we have
is that we want to make sure our water utilities and
candidates
communities have
coming
the
up
assistance
with
and
novel
resources
viruses
they need to address this.
that has no
The
concerns
story
with the
that Fred talked
pre-existing
about is a
immunity
very good
in
example
human
of a city that was
population.
just turned upside down. And
also
the President's America Jobs Plan does have
to
$10 billion
evade the pre-existing
in
immunity. There are
funding
also
to monitor
novel
and
strategies
remediate
to
PFAS
hide the
in
virus
drinking
from
water.
the neutralizing antibodies. For example, we have viruses that
Mackenzie?
are hidden
Great.
in
And I'm going to
package
call on
or
Arpan
like
Lobo from
hide in
the Holland Sentinel
carrier
in Grand
cells or
Rapids,
lipid
and we'll let him ask
nanoparticles.
his question.
So all kinds of new
Hi,
strategies
thanks,
are coming
Mackenzie.
up
Congresswoman
for
Dingle,
this
you
field. So
just
I think it
mentioned the
looks
Senate.
very
I wanted to ask you and
interesting
Representative
getting much
Upton
more
if you've had
attention
conversations
than the
with
field,
any of your
like
colleagues in the
for
Senate,
a couple
if you're
for a few
hopeful that
years
this
ago.
can get to 60 votes and get through.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, since you're from
just
Fred's
along those
district, I should let him go first.
I mean, I understand the idea
I'll
that you
add.
inject a virus
Well, I
into
have
tumor
not
lead, you have
had any
GM-CSF or
specific
some other
conversations.
cytokine that's being
I
expressed.
know that both
You
of
know,
our
with the
senators
PD-1,
are
you cause an
concerned about this
anti-tumor
because, again,
immune
we've seen
response
it
that said,
more
you
than
know,
in
you
just
didn't have scopal
a couple
systemic
of
effect
areas.
based
It's
on
been
essentially
throughout
an
the state,
immunization-like.
including
But
just 2
do you
weeks
see
ago,
some of these new
there was
viruses,
Bill
you know, chemotherapy, the
Kalamazoo
reason
Airport,
chemotherapy works is
several
because
hundred
it gets to
gallons
every cell in the
of
body, it causes
firefighting
toxicity to
foam,
a lot
I
of
guess,
cells, and
with
then it gets to all the
PFAS,
tumor cells.
and,
Do you see these
quickly had to be
virus
remedied, and
manipulations that
there
they're
was
able
not
to
a serious threat
transduce
to the
or
water
infect
table there.
every tumor cell, or is it the fact
I'm
that
sure
they
that,
infect
we're
a
gonna,
tumor
you
cell
know,
and
we've not really,
locally
you know, it's
they
been a
make
different
more
year with
virus and then
COVID.
they infect the tumor cells that are around the tumor
I
cell?
have to believe that we'll have a number of
Yeah,
conversations.
that's a great question.
in the
I think
Senate.
that's one of the
And
limitations for
hopefully,
adenovirus.
because this
Also,
has been
because
introduced earlier,
there's some
may
data
move
showing that the
much earlier than
adenovirus
it
is
did
not
in the last Congress.
as
We've
efficient
got
to
more time
spread
to sort of
within the
work
tumors when
with our
injected
senators on both sides
or
of the aisle to
disseminated
try
into
and get
tumors,
something
solid
done.
tumors especially.
And if I could
So
just
there,
quickly add,
so that's
Congressman
why
Upton,
there are
that
more
Senator Shelley Moore Capito, who's the
new
ranking
viruses
Republican
like
on the key committee in the
like
Senate, has been an
NDV,
incredible
Newcastle
champion
disease
for
virus, and
addressing PFAS pollution, has led
stomatitis
efforts
virus,
to
and
set a 2-year
Vaccinia
deadline for a
virus.
drinking water
Those
standard,
viruses
has led efforts to
can
increase
form
disclosure
syncytial,
of industrial
and
releases of
it's very
PFAS.
easy
It's a
to
personal
pass
issue for
around
her, as well as a big issue in the state of West
inside the
Virginia. So
tumors to
I
surrounding
think we're going to
cells
see
without
real
like
progress
having
in the Senate.
to
And I've
novel
talked
without the novel
Senator,
way
I mean,
to
obviously I've
get
talked to Senator Carper and
surrounding
some of
cells
the
to
others.
be infected
I'm
in the
leaving
tumor
some of the
environment.
troublemakers to Fred.
So
I shouldn't call them
I think that
troublemakers, those that need
and
to
also
be
some of
educated.
these viruses are
But
being
I do think
manipulated
that
to.
people
So, for
are,
example,
I actually want to
Newcastle
thank
disease
Mark
virus,
again,
they can
because
be
I think his
manipulated to
movie
enhance the
helped raise the
diffusion
profile
activity.
of what this
So
was. And, you know, people would look
that
at
is a
us like
strategy
we
to
were
enhance its
crazy. I mean,
tumor lysis
people
activity
can't eat
in
fish.
terms
I
of
had
in terms of spreading
elderly
within the
man,
tumor.
I shouldn't call, who said to
Great.
me,
Thanks,
I
Paul.
lived on
quick
that
regulatory
fish.
question here,
When
which
am I
I don't
going to
know
be
the
able
answer
to
to,
eat
but
that fish
you know,
again?
when you
He's
all
not going
say,
to be able to.
you know, we want the
And I
highest
didn't have the
quality
heart to
raw
tell him.
materials,
That's
you know,
what we
to
need to
control the process.
understand. So yes,
what does
we are
that mean?
talking.
I mean, does that mean a particular company or
Great.
particular
Well,
companies or
thank you all for
certificates of
being here
analysis?
today.
Or how do
We
I
have to end this right
document that
at 4
that I've got
p.m.
the best
But we really
reagents?
appreciate all of your questions. And of course, we
Yeah,
appreciate
that's a
all of
great
our
question.
panelists
So
for being here to talk about this
for
important
early phase
issue.
trials, we
And you
like
can send
we
questions
don't
to Fred or my
mandatory
office
that
anytime.
Let me
you
just say,
have to
Debbie and
use
I are
like
going to be working with your colleagues.
like
We're going to be
clinical
looking at
grade or
experts
GMP grade,
lined
but
up now that
we
Bill's
highly
been
recommend
increased,
that
Bill
you find the
number,
best
to help
quality of
generate that
product
support
available in the
and again
market.
work with our
So,
communities
for
across
example,
all
the
50 states.
GMP grade and the clinical grade would be great because
Thank
this
you,
also
all of
saves
you.
you
Thank you
effort.
for what
Take care.
you're doing.
Because if you
Thank
are
you.
using like a research
Nope,
grade,
thank you.
we are going to ask
Goodbye.
you a lot of
Take care.
questions
Bye-bye.
about
Bye-bye.
the qualification of the materials and the testing of the materials. So if you use those, if you use the highest quality products, so this way this may save you some trouble in the IND submission. So we for example, if some product use like a human's serum albumin, and these because this is like a human derived materials, if you use FDA approved the human serum albumin, that we won't ask you much questions about the potential of adventitious virus contaminations. But if you use a research grade HSA, and we will ask you to provide information about all these donors' informations and testings to ensure its safety.
Got it. It's worth the money. It's worth the money to get it FDA certified approved. Okay. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for questions with Bo. Thanks, Dr.